All right. Thank you for waiting. I know I have been getting messages from all of you saying, "Where are you? I don't want to miss this one. I don't want to miss this one." So, I am going to try here to send you that the direct link. We're gonna see if this works. All right. It might have just messed everything up, but we'll see what happens here. I'm gonna pin it to the featured. I'm gonna copy this because I know that I was receiving the here we go. Some Yeah, I was receiving some messages saying, "Where are you?" Which is beautiful. I love to know that you guys want to hear all about the psychology, like the psychological reality of outgrowing your identity, because that is what we're talking about today. As a psychotherapist, this is something, again, I always feel like I'm like, this is so near and dear to my heart. But really, I love to figure out like what is happening psychologically, mentally, internally, energetically, all of the things when we are going through transitions. That is like my sweet spot. That is what I love when we're going through and moving through these identity thresholds. This is what I love to figure out. And identity thresholds, right? And I feel like I have to do a whole training just about identity thresholds, because what we're actually talking about here with identity thresholds is like moving to your next level. Your business has an identity threshold. You have an identity threshold. Your relationships have an identity threshold, right? So this is really about the psychological reality of what happens when we are outgrowing what we have been used to for years or maybe even decades. I was actually sitting with a good friend yesterday for lunch, and she is going through this process right now within her relationship as she is growing, as she is expanding. She had started her business, like, I want to say a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe. I think maybe it was just a year ago. Anyways, like, this is what happens, and it feels emotional and it can feel disorienting, and it's also necessary as trailblazers, as visionaries, because we are constantly growing and constantly learning. And that is an asset. That is part of our DNA. That is part of our makeup. Our soul makeup is to grow and expand and to blaze new trails and hope that other people can keep up with us, right? Especially the people that we have loved, right? And so anyways, this is something that's really important to talk about. So I know that I jumped right on in. I know that I was a few minutes tardy, so thank you again for waiting and reaching out to me, and letting me know that you are looking for this training, because that is so important. So let's talk about this. And before we dive in, just put a hello in the comments, whether you are watching currently, whether you're watching the replay. I'm hoping that everybody can find us. I did pin us to the top. Pilar is here to take care of you as well. So we are going to dive in. And when I am talking about the psychological threshold that we are going through, right? When we are talking about this space that we're in of moving to the next level, right? Moving to a space that we have not been before. This can be exciting. I always tell people, like, when we're on that edge of our comfort zone and leading into growth, it will likely feel really exciting and really scary. And that is when you know you have arrived. It's like, all right, I have arrived at this edge. I'm standing on the edge. I'm looking over and I'm like, oh my gosh, are we really doing this? Anybody feel that? Put a yes in the comments. Let us know that you're here. Put a yes in the comments. We are here with you. This is something that we really want to talk about, because I don't believe it's spoken about enough, especially in conversations of growth and in leadership, in that next level evolution. Okay. So along with that growth, along with that, like, we are at the edge and we are moving forward now. Okay. This is again the psychological breakdown of outgrowing the identity that has led us to this point, and we're going to continue to move forward. Something that is part of this is grief. And it might mask itself as so many ways, but like grief, we're talking about grief here. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not exciting to talk about grief. It is necessary though, right? And this isn't the grief that like something went wrong. This is the grief because something worked and no longer fits, right? Something expanded. You broke out of your cocoon. It no longer fits you, right? It doesn't mean that it's not sticky or that like you don't think about the times before or the experiences that you had before. It's just, what you're doing has worked. You wanted to grow, you wanted to expand, and it worked. And you can grieve over this, right? So many of us high capacity women expect that when we're aligned with what is next, right? The transition is meant to feel clear and exciting, and you're supposed to feel confident and like so decisive. And that is not what happens. Not what happens. I remember watching this one influencer on TikTok, her girlfriend is her fiance is Gabby. I can't remember her name. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I love watching them. But she was talking about how she landed her dream job, and she has never felt so filled with self doubt and fear and like, oh my gosh, am I doing this? Can they see me? Imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh my gosh. So of course I had to message her. I didn't have to, I chose to. And I was like, this is normal. This is you growing. This is what it means to grow, is that we are uncomfortable. And there is a grieving process that nobody talks about. Nobody told me about it. Right? You don't move into a new level of your life or leadership without experiencing this attachment to the old identities that got us to where we are, that carried you here, right? So there's so many versions of ourselves that got us to this place. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're unclear or you're not meant to be here. It just means that you're honest about actually the cost of growth, right? I tell people, I'm like, there's a cost to everything that we do, whether we stay right in our comfort zone and stay the same. That costs us something. And then when we grow into that next level, when we follow our dreams, when we show up for our business, when we start our business, when we lead in a different way, right? That next level, it costs us something too, right? It costs us past versions. It costs us old beliefs, feelings, beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about the world. There's so many things that go along with this. So being able to identify, right? We are gonna like, this is about recognizing the past, but we are not staying stuck in the past. Right? A lot of the work that I do, especially when we're grounding and we're building our businesses, we're building our leadership, we want to build it from the authentic self. In order to connect with our authentic self, we have to be able to heal past parts of us, to recognize past parts of us that are trying to sabotage and hold us back, not because they're mean, but because they want to protect us, right? And this is not about looking back and romanticizing old versions of yourself. This is about understanding how identity change actually works, right? Psychologically and somatically, so that you actually don't undermine your next chapter like so many of us do by misinterpreting this phase. So that is why it's so important to understand, is that if we do not understand this, if we do not have the self-awareness that this is happening, we will continuously sabotage ourselves. We will continue to feel stuck. We will continue to feel, I don't know about you guys, but I know that when I was stuck in this, like I hate saying even stuck, but when I was in this cycle, right? It was this frustration with myself, right? It's like, I know better. Why can't I do something different? Like, oh my gosh, right? I'm a freaking psychotherapist. I know how the mind works. I've worked with personality styles. I have studied them, right? Like, what is going on? Attachment styles. Like, I know these things. what is happening, right? So I don't want you guys to go through that same amount of frustration over and over and over. And if you already have, you're like, Leanne, it's too late. I've been there. I am there, whatever. You can put that in the comments. There's no shame in this, okay? There's just awareness with curiosity and compassion, okay? I was stuck. I was in this cycle for a decade. I want to say each time it was like the cycle got shorter and shorter and shorter. So that was reassuring, and I was still doing that. So this is why we're here to talk about it. So grief, let's talk about grief. Why grief appears during your expansion. Why grief appears when you are outgrowing an identity, going to the next level. Grief, I want to be clear on this. Grief doesn't only show up when something ends badly. This is what we've often attached grief to, right? When you physically lose somebody, when somebody dies, when somebody leaves your life, when something bad happens, we grieve over it. It shows up when something meaningful completes. I'm going to say that again. Grief also shows up when something very meaningful in your life completes. So you can feel grief for the version of you who hustled to get where you were, right? Or where you are. You can grieve over the woman who stayed small in order to maintain safety or belong in the space that she was currently in. Can't speak up. I just have to accept in order to belong, in order to be not an outcast, right? We can also grieve the identity that learned how to succeed by being needed, by being agreeable, right? By being high performing. These are often words that are associated with us, right? Like as a leader, we are needed. As mothers, we are needed. As partners, we are needed. As daughters, we are needed. Like, right? And we have learned, at least I know I did, like that need, like somebody needs me. That actually gives me my identity or a sense of worthiness. Well, that is no longer, right? That is no longer in the repertoire of my understanding or belief systems, right? Or how much I output or how agreeable I am. So these are but being able to grieve over the identity that got me, again, that person, that version of myself got me to where I am. And I do not regret any part of my experience or story. I've learned because I've learned from it. Right? If I didn't learn from it, maybe. So being able to look at this, so even when those versions no longer fit you, you can still have grief and loss, feel loss, especially, as I was saying before, when they were there to protect you. They protected you from being an outcast. They protected you from being hurt, from being vulnerable, whatever it was, they were there to protect you. Okay. So being able to recognize that, I have to lower my hand, being able to recognize this, right? Accept it. Can you accept that grief? Are you going through a grief process now? Put a yes, I am grieving in the comments, or no, not anymore, because we have gone through this. Okay. So I just wanted to normalize this and call it what it is. So let's talk about the common misstep that we make here, right? This is where many of us women unintentionally create inner friction, okay? So when we're up leveling, when we are outgrowing our past identities to move into our next level identity, right? And again, that next level could be whatever, right? Like you're holding yourself to a higher standard, and not in like a critical way, but just like, this is where I am. This is where I am going. This is where I want to be. I was talking to somebody who she's like, I want to make an impact in the world and I want to be a millionaire. I said, well, how are your behaviors in alignment and how are your thoughts in alignment with somebody who is that already? right? And just calling it what it is. Because what we often do, and she was going through a lot, she's going through a lot of heaviness and grieving and frustration, right? And um, this is why we often have the frustration, why there's suffering when we're at this point, is that we try to often outgrow our past identities too quickly. We're trying to like shove them aside. We're trying to like not deal with them, right? That is like, this is too inconvenient. We just have to be here. We miss the middle. We miss the opportunity to honor them and grieve and move along, right? Like we just want to be okay, I'm here and I want to be here and it should happen overnight. No, that doesn't happen. Okay? That's when we create internal friction. This also happens when we label previous versions of ourselves as like wrong or bad, when we criticize past versions of ourselves instead of honoring them for supporting us the way that they knew how, in order, like, for protecting us. We're just like, you're bad. I don't want anything to do with you. You're cut off. Goodbye. Well, that's not going to happen, right? That is like denying. That is like trying to like take off a piece of your arm or maybe a digit, right? And be like, you're bad. You're out of here. No, like that's it's going to hurt, and it's actually going to hurt you in the long run. um what is it, cutting off your nose to spite your face, but that's in a different realm. But anyways, or and all of this really goes together, right? You try to we try to rush into a new identity without closing the emotional loop. I have a whole on YouTube, I have this whole training. It's the Institute for Female Trailblazers, is on YouTube. And there's this whole training about like, how do we know that closure happens? Because we often rush into a new identity without closing that emotional loop. So when a part of you, all of this creates rejection, right? A feeling of rejection, that there is a part of you that is bad, right? And it doesn't disappear. With that, it actually tightens, it resists, right? It subtly interferes, it sabotages us, right? Not because it's broken, not because it's bad, not because it's out to get us, but because it hasn't been acknowledged. Think about it. When you are trying to express a feeling to a loved one, a partner, and they do not acknowledge it, how do you feel? Put it in the comments. How does it make you feel when an emotion or a belief or something that's important to you goes without being acknowledged? How does it feel? And I want you to think about that in terms of like when we reject or not acknowledge like a different part of us. That's how they feel too. I know this sounds crazy because this is a little bit of like inner systems, right? Psychotherapy. But like there are different parts of us. It's our 8-year-old, our 10-year-old, our 18-year-old, our 30-year-old, our 25-year-old, right? These are all parts of us. These are all versions of us. And when we don't acknowledge them, they get pissed. Okay? Just like we do, or hurt. But that's really what it is, right? They feel hurt. So we want to honor. What we don't honor, we unconsciously repeat. I want you to hear that. What we do not honor, we unconsciously repeat. And that is something that we do not want to do. Okay. So let's talk here for a moment about honoring versus carrying. This is a very critical distinction. This is important, especially for us leaders, us visionaries, right? Honoring a past version of ourselves, it doesn't mean bringing her into every future role, every future decision, no, it does not be like, it's not like, okay, you get to make the choices here. We're not doing that. We're acknowledging her. Some identities that we carried, right, that showed up for us, belonged to a specific season that we were going through. It helped us to get through that season, right? Some identity served a real purpose for that season, to get through, to conform, so that they would belong, so that they could advance their career. And some of these identities are meant to be released with gratitude. Honoring is actually saying, I acknowledge what you gave me and I thank you. And you are no longer needed to lead. Like you can take a beat, take a breath, chill out. I got this. So that's what honoring is. So when we look at it from this way, grief can be seen as a completion, right? Not a regression. So let me tell you why this matters at an identity threshold, right? At this identity threshold, which is again where our old version lives, we're like in this messy middle of like our old version and our new version, okay? At an identity threshold, you're not becoming someone new overnight. Like I was saying, it doesn't happen overnight. We want it to, it doesn't. This actually means that the old identities start to loosen, right? The new identity, the next identity, I don't want to say new, the next identity hasn't fully stabilized. So the old identity is falling away. The old belief system, the old structures, those are falling away. And then this next identity hasn't fully stabilized. The space between can feel very emotionally exposed and vulnerable. That's why I call it the messy middle. I think I'm making a book about the messy middle. It actually was a book title that came up in my mind. So, or is a book title. Anyways, the messy middle is not to be missed. All right, this is where the grief lives. It's in the middle, right? It's not a signal to stop. It's actually part of the transition itself. Okay? We do not cross identity thresholds cleanly. We cross them very consciously. This is why this training is important because we want to be aware of what is happening. It's going to be messy and it's important for us to know, okay, this is what's going on. So we don't stop ourselves before the miracle happens, right? I want you to put that in the comments. Don't stop before the miracle happens. Don't stop before the miracle happens. And the miracle is that next level. It is that next identity, right? And we often stop in the middle and we regress, right? We pull back because it's too scary. We don't know what's going on. Now you know what's going on. Don't stop. Right? So take a moment here and just bring to mind a version of yourself that feels complete, right? Like you have moved, that you successfully moved from one identity to the next, right? I think about when I moved from being an executive director to being a business owner, when I moved from being a like business owner, a professional. These are the different identities of like being a business owner, is being a professional to being a CEO. Those are shifts. And it was weird in the middle. There was a lot of grieving, right? And I will say, right, this is where I feel it's still tender, right? In some areas, right? For you. This happened a while ago for me, but that was just one example of like a shift. And it was still tender. I remember so clearly going through this grieving process when I left corporate and I started my own business and I resigned from corporate and talked about the grieving process, and it was still tender, though I did complete it. Like I saw myself, I am now a business owner, and it was still tender. So instead of analyzing her, that part of you, that version, simply acknowledge her. Thank you so much for how you carried me. Thank you. I mean, like even when I was going from team lead to a clinical manager to, right, these are titles, but I remember the shifts of just like stepping into my own power more and more and more. Um, so thank you. right? Thank that version of yourself. And most leaders that I work with are really surprised by how much internal tension actually releases when gratitude replaces the judgment. Because when we don't have the awareness, we are highly critical of ourselves. I should be feeling this way. Why don't I feel that way? I should be experiencing this. Why, this is something that I wanted. Why do I feel this way? So when we can acknowledge it and meet it where it is, that gives us the release to be able to elevate even further. And this is actually how identities integrate. It's not through force, it's through recognition. What part of you, how old are you, right? Like at what age did you just think, thank you for how you carried me? Maybe it was your 30-year-old self, maybe it was your 25-year-old self, whatever. Put in the comments. I think and I am grateful for this version. Put it in the comments. I thank my 25-year-old for standing up for me, for taking, right? Like for working in corporate, for whatever it is. Put it in the comments. Say it out loud. This is a private group. Nobody else gets to see this. Okay? So, what is really important in leadership as we're growing in leadership, whether it's corporate, whether it's in our business, anywhere, is that the recognition that strong leaders don't abandon parts of themselves to evolve faster. They don't abandon them. They don't shove them aside. They don't put them in a closet. They don't wrap them in a box and throw them over the boat, right? All the things, right? I think I watched a little too much Dexter. But being able to recognize that we don't abandon those parts of us, we actually integrate them. We understand that honoring where those parts of us, those versions have been, that's what has allowed us to lead where we are going with integrity, with clarity. Like all of these versions of ourselves gave us a little bit more clarity and a little bit of whatever we needed at that time. So grief, and here's the thing too, a lot of times we have this fear that like if I allow myself to grieve, if I allow myself to acknowledge these versions and grieve, I'm going to stop growing. That is not what we do here. We actually heal and we move and we acknowledge and we move, and actually that moves us faster because we're not being held down by these old versions that aren't getting acknowledged, right? Unacknowledged grief slows down the evolution. So, if you are feeling a tenderness towards past versions of yourself right now, know that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Nothing is wrong. This is exactly where you're meant to be. You are completing a chapter with integrity, with awareness, with acknowledgement, right? And that's actually what allows the next chapter to open up. So, that is the psychological reality of outgrowing your identity and how we do it with class, tenacity, love, compassion, so that we can continue to rise the way that we're meant to. Because I don't know if you guys have seen what's going on out there. I know you have. We are really needed to step into that power. We are really being called to align with that. So let's not get in our own way. Let's honor all versions of ourselves so that we can move forward with integrity, with confidence, with clarity, and with all parts of ourselves, right? The integration, the wholeness. So, if this speaks to you and you're looking to take your mission, your purpose to the next level, maybe you're being called to start your own coaching or consulting business, holistic business. I help women create events that make an impact in the world through their own businesses. Be sure to join us for the 5 days to create your soul aligned coaching business. It's that and so much more. Like I said, we have women who have their own coaching businesses, their own consulting businesses. We have women who focus solely on creating events. And really, it's about following your life purpose, your joy, your excitement, your vision, leaning into your mission. So join us. It's a free 5-day workshop that starts on Monday, and it is live here, but you do have to register to receive all the goodies. So uh, we hope to see you there, and have a beautiful day. Let us know what resonated with you. What was the thing that you're taking away? What are you taking away from today? Put it in the comments. Let us support you. Let us cheer you on. Let all of the women here, over 2,000 women here, cheer each other on. So, sending so much light and love. Okay. Be sure to go forth and create the change that you're meant to in the world.